Welcome to Deep Dive Lab, where we break down and dissect cutting-edge scientific research, from advanced biomedical technologies to breakthroughs in AI, material science, chemistry, and physics, all told as compelling, easy-to-follow stories.
I am so excited for this one.
Me too. Okay, so picture this. You're sitting in the waiting room for, a massive job interview. The door is going to open any second. Notice what is happening to you physically right in that moment.
Oh man, the worst feeling, just total tension.
Right. Your muscles are tightening up. Your palms are getting ridiculously sweaty. Maybe your hands are even trembling a little bit. But then, contrast that feeling with strolling through a park on a sunny day to meet a new sweetheart.
A totally different vibe.
Exactly. You're walking lightly. Your chest feels open. Your heart is pounding, but it's pounding with this incredible buoyant excitement.
Yeah, I mean, the physical reality of those two moments couldn't be more different, even though both involve anticipating a major life event. Your biological machinery is shifting gears in completely opposite directions.
Today, we are taking a deep dive into something we all experience but rarely question. Think about how we use everyday language to describe these physical feelings. A nervous bride gets cold feet.
Yeah, or a dumped lover is literally heartbroken.
Right. Or you hear a truly great piece of music and it sends a shiver down your spine. We talk about emotions as if they are tangible, physical objects moving through our anatomical spaces.
Our language is completely saturated with physical metaphors for emotional states. It crosses over into pop culture, movies, daily conversation, which brings up a really profound physiological mystery.
Here's a strange question. Why does feeling and emotion physically happen in specific parts of our bodies? And more importantly, is it just a trick of language, or is it biologically hardwired?
Well, to understand how scientists even began to untangle whether a broken heart is biology or just poetry, we have to look at a historical roadblock in psychology, because for a very long time, both classic and modern psychological models operated on a basic assumption.
Which was what, exactly?
They assumed that emotions trigger physical changes to prepare us for environmental challenges, like your brain perceives a threat and your autonomic nervous system kicks into gear.
Okay, so seeing a bear makes my heart race so I can run away. Makes total sense.
Right. And the conscious feeling of the emotion is theoretically triggered by your brain perceiving those bodily changes. But researchers kept hitting a wall.
What kind of wall?
Well, despite knowing the body reacts, previous physiological tests couldn't nail down specific, unique patterns for each discrete emotion. They would hook people up to monitors to measure things like heart rate, blood pressure, or skin conductance, which is basically how sweaty your palms get.
And the results were just a blurry mess. It's like looking at a weather radar. Say you're a meteorologist. You see a massive blob of energy on the screen. You know a major storm is happening. But you absolutely cannot tell if it's a blizzard, a hurricane, or a massive heat wave.
That is a perfect analogy. The scientific instruments were showing the physiological storm, but they couldn't see the shape of the weather. If your heart rate spikes and your palms sweat, are you terrified? Are you furious? Or are you just really, really excited? The monitors couldn't reliably tell the difference.
Which is wild when you think about how different those feelings are to actually experience.
Exactly. And this led to a massive debate in the scientific community. Many argued that the body just had one generic arousal mode, like a single all-purpose alarm system.
So the theory was that your brain looks at the context like seeing a bear versus seeing a winning lottery ticket and simply slaps a label like fear or joy onto that generic physical arousal.
You got it. So how do you map a feeling if the standard medical monitors aren't sensitive enough? This is where the story gets really interesting.
I love this part.
A team of researchers from Aalto University and the University of Tampere in Finland realized they had to abandon the wires and electrodes. In a study published in the prestigious journal PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, they measured the body from the inside out.
By tapping into interoception, right. Break that down for us.
So interoception is basically your brain's ability to perceive the internal state of your body. You have sensory receptors everywhere, stretch receptors in your stomach, temperature sensors in your skin, chemical sensors in your bloodstream.
Wow, it's like a whole internal surveillance system.
It really is. And all of this data travels up a massive biological highway, primarily the vagus nerve, right into the insular cortex of your brain. The researchers decided that instead of measuring the heart rate directly, they would ask the brain what it was perceiving from that internal data feed.
I always think about the brain as the dashboard of a car. Like the body is the engine and it has all these mechanical sensors. The vagus nerve is the wiring. When the engine gets too hot, a warning light flashes on the dashboard.
Yes. And the researchers wanted to see the dashboard, so they created a unique computer tool called EmbodiY.
Spelled Embody, right?
The setup was ingenious. They brought in over 700 participants. You sit at a computer screen and you are shown two blank, two-dimensional silhouettes of a human body. Just simple gray outlines.
Okay, so just like a blank canvas.
Exactly. Then you are exposed to an emotional trigger. Your task is to use a mouse to color in the bodies. On one silhouette, you use warm colors like yellows, oranges, and bright reds to paint the exact regions where you feel your bodily activity increasing.
Oh, I see. And the other silhouette.
On the other one, you use cool colors, so light blues and dark blues, to paint where you feel your bodily activity decreasing, slowing down, or feeling heavy.
Imagine the thermal heat vision from the movie Predator. You know, where the alien is looking through the jungle and seeing the glowing red and yellow heat signatures of the soldiers?
Exactly like that.
But instead of tracking physical body heat, it is a literal heat map of human emotion. But here is where the story of this experiment gets really clever. Because if you just ask people to draw anger, you run into a massive bias problem.
Oh, the bias of language. If you tell someone to map anger, their brain might instantly recall a phrase like hot-headed. So they color the head red, not because they're actually feeling it there, but because the linguistic metaphor told them to.
Spot on. The researchers had to bypass our reliance on words.
Right. They designed a series of 5 distinct experiments to prove this wasn't a fluke. They started with basic emotion words to get a baseline, but quickly pivoted to silent movies and short-written stories.
Which is such a brilliant workaround. They would show a silent 10-second clip of something terrifying, or a story about driving to the beach with friends with the music blasting.
Crucially, these stimuli never explicitly mentioned an emotion or a body part.
So the participants had to map their bodily sensations right as the raw, unfiltered feeling washed over them.
Yep. And they took it a step further to ensure these maps weren't just self-reporting illusions. They showed participants pictures of facial expressions and asked them to color the map based on what they thought the other person was feeling.
Wait, so mapping someone else's emotion?
Yes. They were testing our ability to simulate the bodily states of others. And the final hurdle was taking the thousands of generated heat maps, feeding them into a machine learning algorithm, and seeing if strangers could guess the emotion just by looking at the blank colored silhouettes.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the results are where we get the ultimate wow moment of this deep dive. When the algorithms processed all the data, the blurry weather radar finally snapped into high-definition focus.
The bodily sensation maps were incredibly consistent, statistically distinct, and visually stunning.
Let's look at anger. The map for anger heavily lights up the upper limbs. The arms, the chest, the hands are just glowing in bright reds and yellows.
From an evolutionary biology standpoint, this reveals the deeply functional nature of emotions. Anger is a survival program designed to confront an obstacle or an enemy.
So you're literally ready to fight.
Exactly. Your autonomic nervous system is redirecting blood flow and energy to your upper body, prepping your arms and hands to strike, to push, to defend. The conscious sensation of anger is simply your brain reading that physical preparation.
Then you look at sadness, and it is a stark contrast. The arms and legs are painted in deep, cool blues, indicating a significant drop in physiological activity.
It perfectly matches that heavy, drained, lethargic feeling of grief. You physically feel like you can't move.
Which also serves an evolutionary purpose, right?
Absolutely. When action is futile, when a loss has occurred and fighting or running won't fix it, the body goes into a resource conservation mode. It dials down the energy expenditure in the limbs. Sadness physically grounds you.
And disgust. The map for disgust is so incredibly specific. It centralizes heavily around the digestive system and the throat. It's like a bright yellow knot right in the gut, the literal feeling of being repulsed.
Disgust evolved primarily as a defense mechanism against pathogens and poisons. Before we had germ theory, our bodies needed a way to keep us away from rotting food or disease.
Makes sense. You don't want to eat something toxic.
Right. The enteric nervous system, the massive network of neurons governing your gastrointestinal tract, goes into overdrive. You feel it in your throat and gut because your body is preparing to expel a toxic substance. The emotion of disgust is the conscious echo of that gastrointestinal alarm system.
Wow. Okay, hold on. I had to push back here because my skeptical alarm bells are ringing.
Bring it on.
We talked about how they bypass language using silent movies, but the researchers are still based in Finland. The participants were Finnish. If a culture has deeply ingrained sayings like, Butterflies in the stomach. Won't those people still subconsciously color their stomach because their culture has conditioned their brains to expect it there?
That is the exact vulnerability the scientific community would point to.
Couldn't this whole map just be a local cultural artifact?
What's fascinating here is that the researchers anticipated it beautifully. They knew mapping one demographic wasn't enough to claim a biological universal. So they ran parallel cross-cultural control experiments.
Oh, really? Who else did they test?
They recruited native Swedish speakers, representing a Germanic language family, and Taiwanese Hokkien speakers, representing an East Asian culture and language family entirely distinct from European roots.
Okay, and the idioms and metaphors in Taiwanese Hokkien have got to be completely different from those in Finnish.
Entirely different. If these bodily sensation maps were just cultural habits or learned metaphors, the Taiwanese heat map should have looked radically different from the Finnish maps.
Right.
But the data showed something extraordinary. The bodily maps matched almost perfectly across the West European and East Asian samples.
Meaning, this isn't poetry, it's human hardware.
Yeah.
When a Taiwanese person, a Swedish person, and a Finnish person feel fear, their bodies prepare in the exact same spatial pattern.
Yes. And their conscious minds perceive that exact same physical reality, which fundamentally shifts how we understand what a feeling actually is.
How so?
Well, for centuries, we've had this tendency to treat emotions as ethereal concepts like software running exclusively in the mind, separate from the meat of the body. But this research cements the concept of embodiment.
So the brain is constantly monitoring the physical state of your organs, the tension in your muscles, the temperature of your skin.
Exactly. It synthesizes all that raw sensory feedback to create the conscious experience of an emotion. The emotion doesn't just cause the body to react. The body's reaction is the emotion.
It validates what we've all intuitively felt. When you feel anxious and you get that tight, restrictive vice grip in the center of your chest, that isn't just in your head. It's a documented biological map shared by humans across the globe.
It really is.
But wait, what about happiness? We mapped the negative emotions, but the data on happiness was the biggest surprise of the entire study.
Oh man, the happiness map is unlike any other emotion tested. While anger isolated to the arms and disgust isolated to the gut, happiness was the only emotion that lit up the entire body.
Wait, the entire body?
From head to toe, the map is blazing with warm reds, yellows, and oranges. It is a systemic, full-body activation.
It's the ultimate head-to-toe glow.
Evolutionarily, happiness isn't just a reward. It's a state of high readiness and social openness. Your cardiovascular system, your muscular system, your respiratory system, everything is optimized. It facilitates approach behavior, exploration, and social bonding.
Which are critical for human survival. So, thinking about how interconnected the mind and body are, what does this actually mean for you, the listener?
That's the big question.
How does knowing the physical shape of an emotion change anything in medicine or everyday life?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the implications for psychiatry and mental health are staggering. Think about mood disorders like depression and anxiety. We categorize them as mental illnesses, but they are deeply accompanied by altered bodily sensations.
Right. People with clinical depression consistently report physical pain or that heavy, drained, lethargic feeling in their limbs that we saw so clearly on the sadness map.
Exactly. And right now, diagnosing an emotional disorder relies almost entirely on self-reporting through conversation. A doctor asks, "How do you feel?"
Which is incredibly subjective and sometimes really hard for a patient to articulate.
But these bodily maps could provide a totally novel visual biomarker. Imagine a diagnostic tool in the near future where a patient colors in one of these silhouettes on a tablet. A doctor could look at the deviations in their bodily sensation map compared to a healthy baseline.
They could literally see the physical signature of depression.
They could use these maps to track the progress of a disorder or visually measure how well a therapy or medication is restoring the body's normal emotional map.
A visual diagnostic tool for the mind based entirely on the body. It completely destroys the old Western philosophy that treats the mind and the body as two separate machines. We are one highly communicative system.
And it isn't just about our own internal state. It goes back to that experiment where people could accurately map the bodily sensations of others just by looking at a photograph of their face.
Oh, right, the empathy test.
That touches on the biological mechanism of empathy. Empathy is not just a cognitive exercise where you logically deduce that someone is sad. Understanding others' emotions involves interoceptive simulation.
Simulation.
It's like
Mirroring them.
Exactly. When you see a friend crying, your brain sends a microsignal to your own body to dampen your limb activity and tighten your chest. You simulate their physical map within your own nervous system. You literally feel a ghost of their sadness.
It's why panic is contagious in a crowd, or why a friend's infectious laughter makes your own body feel lighter.
Empathy is quite literally feeling what someone else is feeling in your own flesh.
This deep dive into the source material leaves us with a totally new lens on human experience. To summarize the key takeaways, first, every basic emotion has a unique, distinct bodily sensation map. The blurry weather radar is gone. We can see the exact shape of anger, fear, and disgust.
Right. And second, happiness is the ultimate full-body physiological experience.
And third, these physical emotional maps are culturally universal, proving that our bodies and minds are deeply biologically linked in a way that unites all of us.
It highlights that you really cannot untangle the mind from the flesh. Our consciousness is a reflection of our anatomy.
Which leaves us with a truly provocative question to think about. If this discovery is just the beginning, and our conscious feelings are just our brains reading the physical map of our bodies, what happens when we intentionally manipulate the map?
Oh, that's interesting.
If you artificially warm your limbs or force your posture into the physical shape of happiness, or regulate your breathing to mimic the map of calm, can you hack the system? Can you trick your brain into generating the emotion out of thin air?
It makes you wonder who is really in the driver's seat, your mind or your muscles.
So the next time you're sitting in that waiting room before a massive job interview, and your palms are sweating and your chest feels tight, take a moment. Don't fight it. Recognize that you are just experiencing a universal, ancient biological map, lighting up exactly the way it's supposed to. Or better yet, go find your sweetheart, take a walk in the park, and let that head-to-toe glow of happiness take over.
I love that.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. If you want to keep unraveling the mysteries of the world with us, make sure to follow and subscribe to Deep Dive Lab for more fascinating science stories. Until next time, keep exploring.